Welcome back to Cantina Customs. In this episode 6.5, we're going to be looking at action figure placement in your Haslab Cantina. Now, I did a previous video, episode 6, that discussed character placement from A New Hope, and I received some feedback asking for a video that just focuses on the actual action figures that have been released. So that's what we're going to do in this episode 6.5. So let's get started. First of all, let's take a look at the action figures that come with the Haslab Cantina, starting with Wooer the Bartender. Of course, Wooer the Bartender stands naturally behind the bar, normally in the front, but he also appears around the right side where all of the action of the Cantina showdown between Ben Kenobi and Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba takes place. Next is the Tonica sisters. The Tonica sisters always appear together in the cantina scenes, and they are always seen standing at the bar on the left side of the cantina. Next up is Nabram Lades, the four-armed Plutonian, who stands front and center at the bar. Nabram Lades also appears in an alcove scene with a Rhodian and two spacemen in the back left alcove. But for the purpose of the Luke entering the cantina diorama, we're going to put Nabram Lades in the front and center of the cantina bar. Next up is Greedo, and there are actually three Rhodians in the Cantina, so you'll need three Greedo figures. I'm using the Haslab Greedo and the original Trilogy Collection Greedos. Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina name the other two Rhodians, Thuku and Niche. You can barely make out Greedo sitting in the first alcove to the right as Luke enters the Cantina, but he is more famous for his confrontation with Han, where Han was the only one to shoot. No Greedo shot first. No McClunky. Han's the only one that shot in that scene. The other Rhodian, who also wears a vest, stands in the back right corner of the cantina. You can see him standing behind Ben in the cantina showdown scene. And then the third Rhodian does not wear a vest, and you can see him sitting at the table with Jenny as Luke pans across the cantina. But he also appears in the back left alcove with Nabram Leeds and the spacemen. Since we're looking at the Rhodian triplets, let's look at some other multiple characters, starting with Moset Benid. Now, there are two walrus aliens, Moset Benid and Taz. They're not exactly the same, but the head sculpts are so close, you could use the same action figure for either one of these and make an easy custom. One sits at the left side of the bar at the same table with Lisa Surlid. The other one sits in the second alcove to the right, on the right side of the cantina. There are also two snaggletooth aliens, Zutton and Tequil. One of them hangs out at the back right side of the bar, and the other one stands at the front of the bar or sits at the table at the front of the cantina. There's also a scene where Snaggletooth appears with a Jawa and the rodent alien, which is probably on the first table to the right. So you got a few choices with your Snaggletooth aliens. The next set of twins are the Crockers, Herchek Calfas and Cytor Calfas. Technically, Hasbro has not made a Cytor Calfas action figure, but the two aliens look almost identical, if not totally identical. However, I think these two characters deserve some new sculpts. Now, for the most part, Herchek Calfas is a great figure. It's a great head sculpt, the body, the arms, but you need to paint the eyes and you need to swap out the hands and feet. These two Crockers stand at the front of the bar on either side of Nabram Lades. All right, so now let's start filling in action figures around the cantina, starting on the left side of the bar as if you were looking in from the foyer entrance. Now, unfortunately, Hasbro has not created many of these characters from the left side of the bar. The only two from the Elstree Studio scenes are Lisa Serlin and, of course, Han Solo. Han Solo sits in the second alcove to the left, coming out of the foyer, and Lisa Serlin stands at the table just outside of that same alcove. Next, we have Luke and the droids, which for diorama purposes just stand in the foyer. You can choose whatever version of 3PO and R2 that you have, but my two favorite versions of R2 are the one that came with the Android set that has the painted dome and the middle tread that retracts as you turn the head. And my absolute favorite version of R2 is the Geonosis Arena R2 that has the two compartments with the mechanical arm in the front and the grappling hook in the back. Now, I prefer R2s that have painted domes rather than the chrome domes. And then for diorama purposes, I'm sure that some folks are going to disagree here, but the Escape Pod C3PO, in my opinion, is the best. The coloring, the weathering, the sculpt are just great. The only thing this figure lacks is properly articulated legs and knees. But for just standing purposes, the Escape Pod C3PO is the best, in my opinion. As we work around the right side of the bar, don't forget about the two Jawas that stand off to the side. You can pick whatever Jawas you have. The one from the Streets of Mos Eisley playset is very nice, but for diorama purposes, since they're just kind of standing there, I really like the Black Series two-pack Jawas. Now, there's another Jawa that does appear later on at the table with the rodent character and a snaggletooth alien. That could be one of the same Jawas here. And then as Han exits the cantina, we also have the two Jawas that are walking into the foyer. But for the Luke enters the cantina diorama purpose, you would have two Jawas standing off to the right of the foyer. Next, we have Danik Jericho, aka the Smoker. He also stands at the front of the bar. He's prominently featured in several scenes. This figure definitely needs updating without those goofy holes in his cheeks. As we continue around the bar, we run into a trio of villains. That's right, a trio of villains: Dr. Evazan, Ponda Baba, and Cabe. In the script, these three characters are described as being a trio of villains all together. It doesn't quite come across in the movie, but they all stand around the right curvature area of the bar. And of course, that's the same side of the bar where the Cantina showdown action takes place between Ben Kenobi, Dr. Evazan, and Ponda Baba. And then we have Ben Kenobi. Ben enters the cantina, makes his way around to the right side of the bar. And Ben Kenobi has a conversation with Boshek, who then walks away, and Ben has another conversation with Chewbacca to get them passageway to Alderaan. So everyone's favorite pork chop sideburn wearing Spacer and Chewbacca could be standing around the right side of the bar talking to Ben Kenobi. Now, one character that's easy to miss is Wyosley. Yes, she is in the cantina. She is sitting in the alcove next to Moset Benid or Tasca, whichever walrus alien you say that is sitting in this same alcove. Last but not least is Kiddick Keedkak, the praying mantis alien that stands in the back right corner of the bar. And if Hasbro ever updates this character, I will be really surprised. This rounds out all of the Hasbro action figures of characters who appear in the original Elstree Studio Cantina scenes. And you can pause the video here to get a good look at the character replacement for the Luke enters the Cantina diorama scene. So there's about 25 to 28 existing action figures that you can use in your Haslab Cantina to fill in for the Elstree Studio scenes. But wait, there's more. Depending upon how you want to set up your cantina or exactly which scenes you want to depict, you can also add the two sand troopers, one with an orange pauldron, the other with a white pauldron. These guys walk in from the foyer, they go around to the right side of the bar, and then they walk around to the left side in front of where Han Solo sits. So now we're going to wipe the slate clean and look at the aliens from the LA reshoots, or what is commonly known as the Rick Baker aliens. The very first alien that appears in the cantina is him Dazon. There's no exact location for the Rick Baker aliens, but just trying to fit them in and make them work with the Elstree Studio scenes, I would place him Dazon here, which also makes sense for that kind of in your face introduction. Seated behind him, Dazon, are Pons Limbic, aka Brainiac, Bomb Vimden, aka Don Rickles, and Arliel Schaus. Yes, do not fret. I believe this action figure is coming from that sneak peek photo of the shadowy arms, the one in the bottom right hand corner. That has got to be Arliel Schaus. So don't fret. He's coming, whether on an individual card or in a pack. But all of these aliens sit behind him Dazon. The next group of aliens we'll look at are Mio, or Mio as some people pronounce his name, Jasper, and Muftak. You could also throw in a Figurin Dan figure here, or if you wanted to, you could make an easy custom of Liren Karn. But based upon how Mio turns his head in response to Greedo being shot, this group is best thought as sitting in this back left alcove. The next group of aliens is Momonadon, Trento Duaba, and a Godel. Now, not technically Feltapern Travag, but there is a Godel alien that sits with these guys, and based upon how Luke looks around the cantina, this is where I would place them. Next are Labria, and this bro definitely deserves an updated figure. Dice Ibigon, and depending upon your preference, Ket Wall or Lax Sivrak, or both if you want. Again, based upon how Luke looks behind him, these action figures would go here. Next up is everyone's favorite house band, but they don't do weddings. Figuring Dan and the Modal Nodes. The fan consensus is that these guys should be placed in this alcove since no one can be seen standing there in the Elstree studio scenes. Next are the Love Bugs, Feltapern Travag and Mayum Oneth with their friend Elis Hellrot, who actually doesn't appear in the movies and the behind the scenes photos, but you can't see him in the film. Now, these guys could just about fit anywhere, but if you're going to set up the deluxe Haslab Cantina as one complete diorama, then I suggest these three patrons are sitting in the back corner of the cantina. So you may need an extra wall and an extra table to fill all this out as one large diorama. The last existing action figure is Eller's Madak, which was the very first fans' choice action figure back in the Power of the Jedi line. I fully expect Hasbro to update this figure at some point and really look forward to it since Eller's Madak wears the same outfit as the three spacemen who stand around Lee Subserlin. So then you buy some extra Eller's Madak, you've got a base figure for some easy customs. There's not really a good place to put Elor's Madak for standing in a diorama, but kind of based upon where Elor's appears as Luke looks around, I would put him somewhere in this alcove, but you're going to have to put him on the opposite side that he appears in the movie because of your other aliens that are on that right side, as if you were looking into the alcove. Of course, you could also make an easy Banis Keeg action figure using the head and hands from Eller's Madak and some random Jedi action figure. Technically, a couple of action figure characters appear in the very back of the cantina behind Greedo in the Greedo close up shots that were also filmed in LA. These aliens are Mio and a Godel. This Godel wears a brown robe, so you can just throw an extra Jedi robe on a Filtapern Travag. And then there is a Duros alien who wears the same outfit as Arliel Schaus. So you'll want to make sure and grab two of these figures whenever they are available, whether that's in the hinted 3 or 4 pack or on an individual card. And then hopefully we get a new Eller's Madak so we can swap out the head and hands. And here's an overview of the Rick Baker LA reshoot aliens that have been immortalized as action figures. Again, you can pause the video to take any notes you need. And a quick shout out for photo credits. All the action figure images in this video are either from Bantha Skull, Rebel Scum, or Hasbro. And that's it for another episode of Cantina Customs. I hope everyone is enjoying their HasLab Cantinas. Click that like and subscribe button to be notified for future videos.